Part 1. The Day the World Shattered. My name is Margaret Collins. I am 71 years old. On Saturdays now, people see me smiling at the harbor market, handing out warm apple pies, the air thick with cinnamon and sea salt. That's the today they know. But my after began on the day everything broke. It was an ordinary Tuesday at the packaging plant in Charleston. The room roared with conveyor belts, cans clattering into place, the hiss of steam pressing against the walls. I had my gloves on, adjusting the pressure on the machine, watching lids seal on rows of jars. 6:53 a.m. I glanced at the clock. Then, sudden fire in the back of my head, as if the floor itself had been ripped out from under me. My vision collapsed. I remember the ceiling bending, voices breaking into panic. Call 911, before cold concrete kissed my cheek and blackness smothered me. When light returned, it was fluorescent and merciless. Machines beeped beside me, wires tethered to my chest. I tried to lift my left arm. Nothing. Tried to wiggle my toes. Dead silence. Dr. Simmons leaned over, voice even, words sharp like scalpels. Stroke, partial paralysis, rehabilitation. A nurse named Nora slid a straw to my lips. Plastic and water tasted foreign. My body felt hijacked. Then in the doorway, Michael appeared, my only son. Crisp shirt, damp eyes, a voice that cracked as he promised. Mom, I'll take care of everything. You won't be alone. He signed papers, nodded gravely at doctors, carried containers of home-cooked food into my room at night. He read news headlines aloud, tripped over the medical names, made me laugh despite myself. They brought me a walker, then a chair. Within a week, I could pivot from bed to seat. Within 2, I forgot what it was like to run for the bus. When I was discharged, he was ready. Handrails gleamed in the bathroom, rugs were anchored to the floor, and a fresh smell of paint hung in the hallway. A small table stood by the sofa, drawers labeled morning, noon, evening. He presented a neat schedule: pills at precise hours, therapy exercises, strict diet. On paper, it was flawless. The first week at home matched the plan. Oatmeal in the morning, measured capsules, Michael's steady arm guiding me into the shower. A social worker, Ms. Rivera, visited, calm and lavender-scented. She took my blood pressure, coached me to lift my knee, stretch my ankle. 2 hours in one position is enough, she said gently. Bit by bit, you'll walk again. I clenched my teeth, dragged my heel across the mat, determined. The second week, small things shifted. Michael removed the landline phone from my bedside, so you can sleep undisturbed. He pocketed the mailbox key. Stairs are dangerous. I'll handle it. When Ms. Rivera suggested coming more often, his smile thinned. No need. I've got her. Outsiders just confuse the routine. The very next appointment was canceled. Then another. When I asked, he scribbled his own schedule into my notebook. Massage, 2 p.m. Breathing drills, skin check. New pill bottles appeared in my drawer, labels in tiny print. His explanations quick. Doctor recommended supplements, magnesium blend. One afternoon, Mrs. Parker, my neighbor, knocked with a pie. I heard her bright voice calling my name. Michael cracked the door, accepted the dish, and blocked her view. She's resting, doctor's orders. Her footsteps retreated down the porch. He set the pie on the counter, lowered the television volume, and said calmly, "Guests tire you out. None for now." That evening, I heard the scrape of tools at the front door. He'd changed the lock. The new deadbolt clicked heavy. Final. When I asked for the lamp back in my room, he said it might trip me. When I asked for the phone again, He patted my shoulder. No need. I'm right here. A plastic container appeared in the living room, straps folded neatly inside. Leg braces, he said, fastening the Velcro with a practiced tug. By the third week, silence pressed on the house like a weight. No radio from the kitchen, no footsteps but his. I rolled my chair toward the front door, locked tight. On the sill, a note in his handwriting. Mom, ran to the store. Pills in the morning box. Drink water slowly. I opened the drawer. New capsules waited, unfamiliar, their smell sharp and chemical. Later, Mrs. Parker knocked again. I shoved my chair against the rug, wheels snagging, desperate to reach her. But before I could, Michael's voice filled the hallway. She's sleeping, please. I heard her hesitation, then the shuffle of her retreat. Michael stepped back inside, keys jangling like tiny bells. He set them on the table one by one, metal glinting. His tone was measured, controlled. Order is recovery. I've arranged everything. No distractions. He twisted open the bottle, poured 2 white capsules onto a saucer, slid a glass of water toward me. The clock read 12:01. In my notebook, beside the noon entry, a bold black check already marked the page. I swallowed. Bitter powder coated my tongue. He watched me, face still, unreadable. In the hall, the latch clicked, sealing us in. The house where I once sang over the radio, where cherry pies cooled on the counter, now felt like a facility with barred windows. That was the moment I understood. My life no longer ran on my rhythm. It ran on his. And this was only the beginning. Part 2. The house becomes a cage. The days blurred after that note on the windowsill. My son's footsteps became the metronome of my hours. Keys clinking, doors locking, bottles rattling. I listened more than I lived. Morning began, not with sunlight, but with Michael's shadow looming over my bed, pills already lined on the saucer. His hand reached for my wrist. 2 fingers pressed on my pulse. No words exchanged. He checked the clock, then my notebook, ticked a mark, moved on. I wasn't a mother anymore. I was a patient, a project. At first, I thought it was control out of fear. But by the second week home, the air itself felt rationed. The curtain stayed closed. The phone was gone. My neighbor's knock was a memory. Even the mail arrived unseen. He tucked envelopes away before I could glance at them. He began moving furniture, rearranging the house like a ward. Chairs vanished from the porch. The radio disappeared from the kitchen. Sharp objects quietly relocated. When I asked for my sewing basket, he frowned. You don't need it. The silence after those words was thicker than any locked door. The cage tightened further when he introduced exercise sessions. At 2:00 sharp, he wheeled me into the living room, strapped my weak leg with the Velcro bands. He pulled until the fabric bit my skin. Stretch, Mom. This keeps you strong. My protest died in my throat. He didn't hear words, only compliance. When I groaned, he answered with more pressure, convinced pain meant progress. One night, I tried to wheel myself toward the kitchen after he'd gone to bed. The chair squeaked against the tiles. I wanted water, nothing more. But halfway there, a floorboard creaked loud as a gunshot. His door opened instantly. He stood in the hallway, expressionless, arms crossed. What are you doing? My voice stumbled. Just thirsty. He poured the glass himself, held it to my lips like I was a child. Then he pushed me back to bed without another word. The following morning, the wheels of my chair felt stiff. He had tightened the screws. Maintenance, he said. But the chair moved slower, heavier, each turn of the rims dragging like punishment. The house itself began to rebel against me. The hall smelled of fresh paint, but not cheerful, chemical, suffocating. The bathroom mirror disappeared. In its place hung a dull sheet of plastic. The bedroom door no longer opened fully, its hinge suddenly misaligned. Each change whispered the same truth. This was no longer my home. And then came the night of the storm. Rain hammered the windows, lightning flared, and somewhere outside, sirens wailed. I reached for the blanket, but it slipped, and I leaned too far. The chair tilted, sent me sprawling to the floor. My shoulders screamed with pain. I called out, louder and louder, until my throat burned. Minutes later, Michael rushed in, not with panic, but with irritation. "Why did you move? Why didn't you wait?" He lifted me roughly, set me back like a misplaced object, and pressed a pill into my palm. "This will calm you down." The taste was bitter, stronger than before. My head fogged almost instantly. When I woke, it was morning. My shoulder ached, but worse was the new sight. Straps fixed permanently to the chair, waiting for me. He didn't explain. He didn't need to. From that day on, freedom was no longer assumed. It had to be earned, begged for, or stolen in moments when his back turned. The kitchen, the porch, the mailbox, they became distant countries I could only dream of. My world shrank to 4 walls, a locked door, and the sound of keys jingling in my son's pocket. And deep inside, a thought took root, faint but unshakable. This wasn't protection. This was possession. Part 3. Whispers in the Walls. Days melted into each other, carved by clocks and pills. Michael's routine was exact, almost military. 8 a.m., pills. Noon, exercise. 6 p.m., dinner. 10 p.m., lights out. My body moved to his rhythm, not mine. But houses have memory, and mine began whispering to me. The pipes moaned at night. Floorboards sighed under weight. Wind pressed against the windows like it wanted to get in. I listened, straining to separate the natural creaks from the ones that belonged to him. Michael had grown quieter, too quiet. He stopped explaining, stopped asking. He only instructed. His footsteps echoed down the hall like commands. He locked drawers, pocketed every spare key, carried the phone with him even to the bathroom. My questions were swallowed by the walls. One afternoon, when he stepped out for groceries, I wheeled myself to the kitchen. The drawer under the stove, usually stuffed with cloths, was locked. The cabinet with old photo albums, padlocked. Even the window latches had been screwed shut. I pressed my forehead against the cool glass, staring at the street below. Mrs. Parker walked her dog, leash bouncing. I wanted to bang on the window, to scream her name. But the screws gleamed, unyielding, and I sat there with my throat burning, silent. The whispers came strongest at night. Pipes rattled, a door shifted, shadows flickered under the crack. I convinced myself someone else was there, someone who could help me. I began leaving tiny signs, my hairpin tucked in the doorframe, a spoon balanced on the dresser. If they moved, I would know he wasn't the only one crossing my threshold. But the only person who noticed was Michael. He picked up the spoon, studied it, then looked at me for a long, unbearable minute. He didn't speak. He just placed the spoon back on the dresser, upside down. Message received. The next day, he started controlling the lights. At dusk, he pulled the curtains and dimmed every bulb, the house swallowed by gloom. I asked him why. He smiled faintly. Energy costs. You wouldn't understand. The darkness thickened until I could barely see the notebook on my lap. One night, unable to stand it, I tried again to move alone. I dragged my chair into the hallway, wheels squealing. I wanted to test the front door, even knowing it would be locked. Halfway there, I froze. A voice drifted from the living room. Michael's voice, low, steady. He was talking on the phone. "She's not ready yet. She depends on me completely. No, nobody visits. Don't worry, it's handled." The words cut into me. Who was he talking to? What did handled mean? I pressed back into the shadows, heart thundering. The conversation ended with the metallic jingle of keys. When he turned the corner, his face was calm, expressionless, as though nothing had passed between his lips. That night I dreamed of bars over my windows, chains on my chair, and Michael holding every key. I woke drenched in sweat, the taste of metal on my tongue. The whispers of the house grew louder after that. Each creak, each groan of the walls carried a warning. I began to believe the house itself wanted me to resist. So I started my own system. I memorized the sound of every key in his pocket, the rhythm of his footsteps, the time it took him to shower, the exact minutes he was gone for groceries. I counted the pills he poured, traced the labels with my fingernail, etched details into memory. He thought he had locked me into silence. But the walls spoke, and I listened. And deep inside, something sharp began to stir. The beginning of a plan. Part 4. The first attempt. The house pulsed with his rules, but I had started carving my own silence inside it. I tracked the tick of the clock against the shuffle of his shoes, measured the length of his grocery runs, the pauses of his showers. Every second mattered. That Tuesday, the rain hadn't stopped since dawn. Thunder cracked, rattling the windows. Michael paced from room to room, restless. At noon, he shoved 2 capsules toward me, then vanished to take a phone call in the kitchen. His voice rose and fell, too low for words, but I caught fragments. "She can't go anywhere. Yes, completely dependent." While his back was turned, I slipped the pills under my tongue, then into the folded corner of my blanket. My heart pounded louder than the storm. For the first time, I hadn't swallowed. I hid them beneath the mattress seam, fingers trembling. It felt like stealing oxygen. Later that evening, as he busied himself tightening screws on my chair, I tested the strength of my legs. Just a shuffle, a tremor of muscle. My left foot dragged like stone, but it moved. Pain ripped through me, yet the thrill of defiance burned hotter. The next morning, when he left for groceries, I wheeled into the hallway. Keys clattered as he locked the front door behind him, his silhouette disappearing down the steps. I had 20, maybe 30 minutes. I pushed toward the cabinet he always guarded. The lock glared back. I scanned the room, then spotted a forgotten butter knife on the counter. My hand shook, but I wedged the blade into the gap. Metal scraped. The lock resisted, squealing. Sweat dripped down my neck. At last, it clicked. Open. Inside lay stacks of envelopes, some yellowed with age, others fresh and unopened. All addressed to me. My breath caught. Letters from insurance, from church, even postcards with my name in familiar handwriting. He had hidden them all, buried my world in a locked drawer. I stuffed one into my pocket, my pulse racing. At that moment, the front door groaned. He was back early. My blood froze. I shoved the cabinet shut, tried to wheel back, but the rug snagged the wheels. Too slow. Michael's shadow filled the doorway. His eyes dropped to the knife in my hand, then to the uneven cabinet. His jaw tightened. He said nothing, not at first. The silence stretched until it hurt more than any shout. Finally, his voice came low, deliberate. Curiosity makes people careless. He took the knife gently from my grip, almost tender, then placed it on the counter with a soft clink. He leaned closer, breath steady. Next time, you might hurt yourself. That night, straps appeared on the chair again, but tighter, firmer. My wrists ached from the bite of the Velcro. He left me there. Lights dimmed. The storm outside still raging. But under the mattress, the 2 white pills remained hidden. And in my pocket, crumpled against my palm, was a single stolen letter. Proof that the world beyond these walls still remembered me. For the first time since the collapse at the factory floor, I felt something stronger than fear. I felt the pulse of rebellion. Part 5. Seeds of Rebellion. Michael thought he had sealed every door, locked every window, silenced every voice around me. But the truth was simpler. He had underestimated silence. He didn't notice how much a quiet old woman could see when no one thought she was looking. I began mapping his patterns like a general studying an enemy. The exact sound of each lock, the order of his keyring, the creak of the second stair when he stepped down. I memorized his sigh before he tightened the straps, the way he hummed low when cooking, the pause between his footsteps when he lingered outside my door. Every day, I kept the pills. Some under the mattress, others tucked into the seam of my cushion, even inside the hollow of an old perfume bottle he'd left on the dresser. A small army of white capsules gathering, waiting. I practiced strength in secret. When he wheeled me to the living room, I shifted my weight forward, pushed against the chair arms, held myself upright for 5 seconds, then 10. My muscles burned, but each attempt left me stronger. At night, when the house slept, I gripped the bed frame, dragging my foot inch by inch across the floor. The whisper of progress filled my chest. One morning, while Michael showered, I slipped the stolen letter from my pocket. It was from a church friend, dated months ago. "We miss you at Sunday service. Please call." My hands trembled. The world hadn't forgotten me. He had stolen it, hidden me like clutter. That proof fueled me. I tore the corner of the envelope and tucked the piece inside my sleeve. A talisman. If I could show it to someone, anyone, they would know I wasn't imagining this prison. I started leaving false trails for him. I'd nudge the chair into a different angle, push a drawer slightly open, move the spoon on the counter. He always noticed, always corrected, but never realized that each adjustment taught me more. His paranoia sharpened mine. Then came the day he slipped. He forgot the phone on the counter while rushing out. I wheeled close, my pulse hammering. The screen lit with a message. Status? Is she stable? No name, just a number. My breath hitched. He wasn't just keeping me here for himself. Someone else was watching, expecting updates. I couldn't reply. My hands too slow, the lock screen demanding a code. But the truth was clear. He wasn't acting alone. That night, he brought me soup. Steam fogged my glasses as he leaned down. "Eat it all. You need strength." His voice was calm, but his eyes flicked to the straps, then back to me. I lifted the spoon, steady, obedient. But inside, I was calculating how many pills I had hidden, how many steps it would take to reach the porch, how long it would take him to notice the difference. Michael believed he had broken me into routine. What he didn't see was the spark rekindling beneath it. The seed of rebellion had taken root, and it was growing fast. I was no longer waiting for rescue. I was preparing for war. Part 6. The Breaking Point Nights had become my ally. While Michael dreamed, I built strength in silence. My arms thickened with new stubborn muscle. My legs trembled but held me seconds longer each time I forced them down. The pills I had hidden were many now, lined beneath the mattress like soldiers waiting for a command. The storm came on a Thursday. Heavy rain lashed the windows, thunder drummed across the roof. Michael paced the living room, phone glued to his ear. His voice was sharper than usual, urgent. "She's under control. I told you, she isn't going anywhere. Stop pushing." He turned, and for a heartbeat, his eyes caught mine. Cold, suspicious. When he finally left for groceries, I acted. I pushed myself out of the chair, gripping the armrest, then the dresser, every inch a battle. My foot dragged, toes scraping the floor. Pain fired up my spine, but I made it to the cabinet. This time, no knife. I slammed my shoulder against the wood until the cheap lock cracked. Inside, more letters. Dozens. Some unopened, others slit and resealed. One envelope thick with photographs. Pictures of me on the porch, at the market, even in the hospital bed. Not taken by friends. Taken secretly. Someone was watching long before I realized. My breath stuttered. The front door rattled. Too soon. He was back. I shoved the envelope under the cushion of my chair and collapsed into it just as the door swung open. His eyes swept the room, lingering on the splintered cabinet. "What did you do?" His voice wasn't raised. It was low, vibrating with danger. He crossed the floor in 3 strides. His hand clamped my wrist, tighter than ever. "You're hurting yourself. You're not thinking clearly." "I am thinking," I whispered. My first open defiance. The words shocked even me. His face darkened. He dragged the straps across my chest, yanked them until my breath caught. My hands clawed at the Velcro, but he slapped them down. His voice was a hiss. "You don't understand how fragile you are. Without me, you're nothing." That night, he left me bound in the chair. My arms ached, circulation gone, but my mind burned hotter than pain. I counted his footsteps until the house went still. Then, inch by inch, I wriggled free. Skin raw, wrists blistered, but I was out. I limped to the kitchen, tore open the cushion, pulled the stolen envelope. The photographs spilled into my lap, my own life cataloged like evidence, and beneath them, one paper darker than the rest, a document stamped with his name beside mine. Power of attorney, legal control. My entire existence signed away. My heart hammered, but instead of fear, I felt clarity. He hadn't just caged me. He'd erased me. And I swore, under that storm, under the flicker of broken light, that I would not let him finish what he started. The breaking point had come. Part 7. The last word. The storm never truly left the house. Even when the skies cleared, thunder lived inside me, beating against my ribs. Michael thought he had tightened every bolt, written my fate in black ink on that legal paper. But he had overlooked one thing. I had nothing left to lose. That morning, he lined up the pills as always. 2 white capsules on the saucer, a glass of water placed just so. I lifted the spoon, obedient mask on my face. I swallowed, nodded, and watched him mark the notebook. When he turned, I spat the capsules into my napkin, folding them with a steady hand. Another 2 for my collection. By now, I had enough hidden to make him stumble, enough to break his rhythm. The plan was crude, dangerous, but it was mine. The chance came on a Sunday. He was restless, distracted, phone buzzing every few minutes. Someone on the other end was demanding, pressing. His replies grew short, sharp. It's under control. Stop asking. That night, he poured himself tea. I watched from the corner, silent, as he left the cup unattended on the counter while stepping into the hall. My fingers moved faster than my legs ever could. I tipped 3 of the bitter capsules into his drink and stirred with the spoon, hands shaking only once. When he returned, he lifted the cup without a glance. One swallow, then another. My heart pounded so hard I thought it might give me away. But he drank it all. Minutes later, his words began to slur. He staggered, blinking. "What? Did you—" His hand reached for the counter, missed. He crashed into the chair, breath ragged. I wheeled closer, every movement electric. For once, he was the one trapped, his limbs heavy, uncooperative. He looked at me, eyes wide, disbelief written across his face. "You said I was nothing without you," I whispered. "But look at you now." I pulled the envelope of stolen letters from under the cushion, dropped them onto his lap. They slid across his trembling hands, evidence of every theft, every silenced voice. The neighbor's knock came then, sharp and sudden. Mrs. Parker, faithful as the tides. This time I didn't wait for him to answer. I shouted, voice hoarse but strong, "Help me!" The door burst open, her eyes widening at the sight. Me in the chair, Michael slumped, pale, unable to rise. Behind her came others, the dog barking, voices calling, phones dialing 911. The house filled with witnesses at last. Michael tried to speak, but the words tangled. He sagged against the table, powerless. For once, it wasn't me bound by straps. It was him, chained by his own arrogance, undone by the very system he thought unbreakable. When the paramedics carried him out, his eyes met mine one last time. There was no plea, no apology, only the stunned look of a man who realized too late that control had slipped forever. I sat in the doorway, the night air cool against my face, letters clutched to my chest. For the first time in years, the house didn't feel like a prison. It felt like a place that belonged to me again. And I knew one truth with perfect clarity. The last word was mine.